Hi everybody, welcome back to Active Self-Protection Extra. Today, excellent article that I wanted to turn you onto. The link is in the description from a good friend of mine, Professor David Yamane from Wake Forest University, titled Guns in America, a liberal gun-owning sociologist offers 5 observations to understand America's culture of firearms. I want to bring them to you, but I want you to go click through, check the article, give him some reads, and send that sucker off into the wild. But let's talk about what he says. Today's video is brought to us by Mantis. The Mantis family of products is integral to ASP staff building handgun and carbine skills and are your most economical and fastest path to improvement in your skills too. Whether you choose the X10, the Laser Academy, the Blackbeard, or use them all in concert, they will help your practice be more effective, efficient, and fun. Go check them out, pick up a unit, and thank them for sponsoring today's video. Wasn't too long ago that Professor Yamane actually was in Phoenix, Arizona, which is where I live, for a seminar put on for the Center for the Study of Guns in America at Arizona State University. And so we did a couple of videos. I have put a link to those videos in the description too. Check them out. And I consider David to be a good personal friend. He's just an incredible human. I really love his insight. He's a total egghead nerd. He's a sociology professor, right? This is what he does. He teaches sociology and he studies sociology, which is the study of people groups, of movements, of society. And he is from the San Francisco Bay Area, which I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area originally as well. So we have that in common. Now he lives out obviously on the East Coast because he teaches at Wake Forest. And Wake Forest, not a bastion of conservatism by any stretch. And he there, though, is kind of the gun-owning liberal professor. And there's some interesting stuff. He said to me, I saw this article because I keep track of this stuff, but he also talked to me about it. And he said, this is 14 years of my research condensed down to 900 words of TLDR. That's pretty good. I think that's worth checking out. So I'm going to kind of go through these a little bit. I'm going to put the glasses on so that I can actually read it more easily. But a fascinating article that has a lot of backing behind it, and he's got links into it. So the article itself has all of the argumentation in it and links to various sources. I think it's really valuable, and I think you should check it. So here's number one. His number one point: guns are normal. I love this. If you ever go over to Professor Yamane's, his kind of big book is called Gun Curious, and one of his big tenets in Gun Curious is guns are normal. And normal people use guns. I love it. I think that is absolutely spot on. And his argument for that is 86 million American adults, 1 in 3 American adults own at least one firearm. Of the estimated 400 million firearms in the US today, I would say that number is low, 400 million. I love how he puts this in perspective. Let's put it in perspective. He says, imagine if everyone who uses TikTok in the US owned a gun, and then add the population of New York City. And that's how many people own a firearm. That's enough gun owners to fill over 1,000 NFL stadiums. And I just really think that is a great way to kind of put things in perspective. So if you're using the talk tick because you're one of the kids these days, that is, again, not even the number of TikTok users in the US is fewer than the number of firearms owners in the US, and that's a big deal. Guns are very normal. And honestly, the people who admit to using a gun, when they do polling, and wherever they get those numbers from, those numbers are low because there are plenty of people, a lot of left-leaning people. So if you are left-leaning, you're less likely to report that you own a gun because it's not quite as socially kind of acceptable in those political circles. And then if you're way right, you tend not to because you don't trust the media, the researchers, the government. You worry that you're going to get put on a list, and so you don't tell them that you have a gun either. So there's a underreporting there. I know that they try to control for it. My guess is that 86 million American number is probably a little bit low. But even with that number, guns are very normal, and that's worth us kind of recognizing. Number 2, and again, this is a big discussion. He says his point is gun culture 2.0, that the culture of guns in the United States has evolved over time. And that is absolutely true. That is objectively true. that if you look at the general use of firearms in the mid 18th century, the late 18th century when the United States was formed, the mid 19th century, the early 20th century, here now we're kind of into the heart of the 21st century. Those things have changed. And in particular, he likes to talk about gun culture 2.0. That is Professor Yamane's jam. That is his bailiwick. And in his mind, gun culture 2.0 is not the old American gun culture of hunting, of passing down from parents to children, but is rather self-protection and self-defense. And that is overwhelmingly why people say they own firearms today. And that really can, I think, trace itself back into the 1960s, my own understanding of that. Professor Yamane would say 1980s, as concealed carry laws got more liberal, as got in the classic sense of got more loose and permissive in the 1980s. Because in 1986, it was very few states that allowed people to carry concealed firearms or recognize the right to keep and bear arms. And now over half the states are constitutional carry, and all 50 states are ostensibly shall issue, and the District of Columbia. So that has definitely evolved over time. And today you can see the way that gun companies advertise. They advertise overwhelmingly related to self-defense and overwhelmingly related to personal and home protection. And that is the overwhelming reason today that people own firearms. Though there are still hunters out there. I'm a hunter myself. I own both personal defense firearms and hunting firearms. And there are other reasons people own firearms too. Some people like competitive shooting. Some people just like the craftsmanship. They like to collect a machine, and that's the machine they like to collect. So there are a number of reasons that you can own firearms, but gun culture 2.0 is all about self-defense, and that is currently the kind of current du jour. His third point, gun ownership is diverse. And, I think if the only exposure you have is you go to the local gun show, we have them here in Arizona. I don't go very often, but if you do show up to the local gun show, that gun show is going to be pretty overwhelmingly white. If you go to the NRA annual meetings, I actually had to miss this year because I had a trial. That's, if you've seen me talk about it on the channel, the Elliott trial happened. I had to testify on the opening day of NRAM. But you show up there, it's white and it's old, okay? And that's who the primary demographic who shows up in those places. However, Black Americans, he says, have a particularly strong tradition of gun ownership dating at least to the 19th century abolitionist movement. And that is absolutely true. It just doesn't get talked about as much. And he says today, 1 in 4 Black Americans, as well as 1 in 5 Latinos and 1 in 4 women personally own a gun. And those are not insignificant numbers. Those are very significant numbers. 20% of gun owners consider themselves to be politically liberal. So one of my big things that I like here, again, the only political position active self-protection has is that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I believe that the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms, is a civil right, and it belongs to all people without exception. And so I love what he says here. For every 4 evangelical Protestants who own handguns, 3 people who don't identify with any religion own them too. And as a kind of ex-evangelical Protestant, right, somebody who doesn't really hold on to his evangelical bona fides but loves Jesus, I love that my atheist friends and my agnostic friends and my Wiccan friends and my Muslim friends and my Hindu friends and my Jewish friends and everywhere in between and apart from that own firearms too. Scholars are even beginning to discover the importance of LGBTQ plus gun owners. And this is one of those big reasons that I try really hard not to force team the right to keep and bear arms with other political positions, because we can disagree about other political positions or religious positions or personal ideas and still recognize each other's right to keep and bear arms, because I do love the idea that an armed society is a polite society and we are adults, so we use words to talk and discuss ideas. And gun ownership is quite diverse. So I do see this sometimes. It's kind of funny because, of course, I say that active self-protection has one political position. Well, John Correa, me as a human, I have a host of political positions, right? I have a fully orbed political worldview just like you do. And it's so funny to me that people say, oh, John runs ASP, he's a gun owner, so he must agree with me politically. And at least that's what they think, because they start talking to me like I agree with them. And there are plenty of things that I may not agree with you on, and I'm okay with that. That doesn't hurt my feelings any. I have a kind of an eclectic view. I'm a kind of wackadoodle, lowercase l libertarian, and live and let live guy. So I think that puts me at a minority, quite frankly, because of a host of reasons. But again, I'm not talking about ASP. I'm just talking about me as a person. And gun ownership is quite diverse, and so understanding that I think is really, really helpful. Number 4. Guns are lethal tools. Now, I think sometimes we get this idea of duh. Yeah, yeah, of course they are. Duh, why are we even talking about that? I do like his intro in this paragraph here. Many tools like knives and chainsaws are lethal, meaning they have the capacity to cause death. Guns differ because their lethality is by design. Well, I would argue that knives' lethality is by design. Consequently, guns can make dangerous situations more deadly. So I think that he goes on to talk about how actually, from the perspective of other developed nations, the actual violent rates in America aren't really different than those, but our lethality rates tend to be because of the easy presence of firearms. Suicides, for instance. About 90% of people who attempt suicide with a firearm are successful. So our suicide rates aren't out of whack, but our success rates, our suicide attempt rates, but our suicide success rates tend to be high because more people attempt them with firearms here than anywhere else, and they tend to be successful with firearms. Our crime rate, our violent crime rate is not as high, but it does is not higher significantly than other developed nations. But the violent crime that we do have does tend to be a little bit more lethal because of the presence of firearms. And I think if we ignore that, then we do so to our detriment, frankly. I think that not recognizing that, and I don't even want to say admit, well, we got to admit that. No, it's by design. Yes, a firearm is a lethal tool. By its design, the right to keep and bear arms arms the populace to respond and to stand up to the government with violence if necessary in righteous defensive use of force. So that right now is righteous defensive use of force against criminal behavior. And if it comes to it, the right to keep and bear arms is for righteous defensive violence against an oppressive government. I don't think we're anywhere near that. But my point is that that's what they are for. They are designed and to be lethal. Okay, not admitting that is dumb, in my opinion. So that's number 4. He's got some stuff on those, and some of the links in the article are quite interesting. And number 5, I really like this one. Guns are paradoxical. I'm going to read this to you. Despite high rates of firearm suicide and homicide, most guns in the U.S. will not kill anyone. And most American gun owners will not commit violence against themselves or others. My calculations, based on the 2023 Centers for Disease Control and Prevention data, indicate that just one gun death occurred per 8,560 firearms and 1,840 gun owners, meaning that at least 99.99% of guns and 99.95% of gun owners were not directly involved in fatalities last year. These observations collectively point out a final insight. Guns resist simple categorization and embody multiple paradoxes. And that paradox is two truths that we know are true and yet seem to be kind of pulling at each other, that we can't identify how they go together. So we say, wait a minute, firearms are dangerous and yet they are an important safety tool. That seems to be a paradox. But we hold both of those to be true, and we recognize the paradox for it, and we can just sit in that difficulty. I don't feel the need to have to solve that. And he does a good job of explaining that. I think stuff like this is important, so please do me a favor. Hit the link. I put it in the description. I'll pin it as a comment too on YouTube. I can't pin comments in the app. Just if you're in the app, go in the description. But read the article, forward it on, post it on your social media, send it to people that you know, and get a conversation started with them. Whether they agree with you politically or not, I think it's worthwhile in doing. By the way, you've seen the fact that we've had a couple of new colors of the Good, Sane, Sober, Moral, Prudent Person t-shirt. Yes, there are, and they are on the ASP website if you want one. We make a few bucks from that if you want to buy those, and I think they're cool, and they're in multiple colors now. So I just got a new royal blue one, and I think it's kind of nice. Anyways, my appreciation to Professor Yamane for a well-written, very brief article. And I think that when we talk about these ideas, that I think that it's worthwhile. Guns are normal, that gun culture has evolved over time. Gun ownership is quite diverse. Guns are lethal tools, And they have paradoxes with that because their normality and their lethality, the fact that culture changes over time and its diversity means people own them for lots of reasons, and that we just have to recognize that as part of our culture. I think that's worth thinking about. Which one of these surprised you the most? Which one of them made you at first? I will really want to know in the comments. Which one made you go, hey, wait a minute, I don't know about that. And then when you went and read the article, did it change your mind? Let me know in the comments, would you? Hope you have a great day.